It's been a crazy 5 days and we've racked up a ton of miles on our minivan. Now, 20 minutes after getting back home, I'm chilling on the porch in my favorite old chair with a glass of tasty dark porter, thinking about how our twins are out there on their own for the first time. Miranda and I just finished a journey that turned our family home into an empty nest, just like so many other parents before us. Man, we've been dropping off our kid at college the past few days, and let me tell you, none of the other parents out there are feeling as awesome as I am right now. When Luke started at Georgia Tech in Atlanta, it was the start of our road trip. We were able to ditch our rental car there, so we didn't have to take turns driving anymore. The next day, our daughter Kelly got flown out to Gainesville to start her new life as a Gator, while we and her parents headed a little further east to Daytona Beach. Yo, we had a few days of soaking up the sun and hitting the beach. The next 3 days were wild. We were getting it on more than ever in our whole marriage. Miranda couldn't get enough, man. We had kids young, so now at 36, we still had plenty of energy. On the way home, we stopped at a deserted truck stop and Mary tried to show me she accidentally forgot to wear underwear. I was just chilling in a chair enjoying the moment. So, Miranda went upstairs to shower and freshen up. I was kinda surprised when I heard the hairdryer going, 'cause that only happens when she's getting ready for work or going out. A few minutes later, the hairdryer stopped and I heard Miranda's footsteps in the kitchen, with the clicking of her heels. That was strange, 'cause she usually walks around in rubber slippers or barefoot. Before I could carry on with my lazy day. Thinking about these crazy things, she called me, "Hey honey, can you come sit with me for a sec? I want to talk to you real quick." Getting up from my dreams and my chair, I happily replied, "I'm coming, babe." Heading into the kitchen, I was surprised to see my wife sitting at the table in a new top and fresh jeans, looking as good as always. She poured me a hot cup of coffee and put it in front of me, where she was sitting. Miranda. She seemed really focused and a bit tense, and I was confused because I didn't get what her serious look meant. So, I slowly sat down on the chair she was clearly pointing at. "What's up, Mary?" I asked warmly, grabbing the cup and taking a sip of the strong, hot drink. "I'm leaving you, Alan," she said simply and casually in a calm voice, picking up a big envelope made of thick paper. "I have divorce papers here for you to look over and sign." She kept talking, but I was in shock. Man, I was so shocked that my head was spinning and I couldn't even speak. It felt like I got hit with a huge blow out of nowhere. I've never even tried boxing, but in that moment, I felt like I was floating like a boxer does after missing a big uppercut and getting knocked down hard. Meanwhile, Myri just kept on hammering those boring phrases into my brain, completely ignoring the fact that I was feeling totally messed up. All the details for a divorce are laid out in those papers. I'm not expecting anything. Yo, I left all my stuff at the house, so do whatever you want with it. Our savings are split, bills are paid, and I canceled our joint credit cards. I told everyone who needed to know about my new address. If you need more info, ask your own lawyer. If you need me, talk to my lawyer. Miranda kept it cool and businesslike as she mentioned getting a restraining order because she's not messing around. Hey, if you're wondering if we're gonna keep in touch after I bounce, all the info you need is in this envelope. I also switched up my phone number, email, and closed all my old accounts. She didn't think I'd say anything, and I was just sitting there like a dummy, staring at her. There was a cup of coffee on the table in front of me, getting cold with the steam fading away. She tapped her fancy nails on the table, giving me a warning not to try anything sneaky. Listen, don't bother trying to pry info out of the kids, they know what's up and won't spill. Same goes for my parents, they've stopped giving me the cold shoulder and checking out Miranda's fancy hands. She finally looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Alan, I know you're gonna ask, so I'll just spill it. I've been with Dan for 13 years and I'm hoping to make him my official hubby, not just my work hubby. Hey Alan, I gotta be real with you. I used to love you, but now I love Dan more. He's been patient and earned his place with me. So, I'm breaking up with you. I'm all in with him now. Goodbye Alan." With that, Miranda got up, grabbed her stuff, and headed for the door. Just as she was about to leave, she finally found her voice and said in a weird tone. She just croaked out one word, no emotion at all. Then she froze, turned her head, looked me dead in the eyes, and said only 2 words, "Sandy Thompson." With that, she walked out, slammed the door behind her, and all I could hear in the quiet was the faint click of her shoes, the muffled car door closing, and the sound of the engine roaring as she drove off and disappeared. That was the last time I saw or spoke to Miranda for the next 16 months. Dan was at work, as usual. Roberts is the dude I've known for like forever, my main bro for the past 18 years. Mary, who is Dan's wife, and Lisa, who is his wife, became tight during their pregnancies. They were like soul sisters, since they were both around the same age. Lisa was 22 and Mary was just a bit older at 18. And then Cassie, Dan and Lisa's daughter, was born the day after our twins, like some crazy coincidence that was meant to be. This initial bond grew into an unbreakable friendship, and they were always together, which meant us husbands were always hanging out too. The two families became super close and practically became one big, friendly family because we hung out every weekend and lived just 2 blocks away from each other. Everything was great until our little surprise when the twins were born. Miranda and I were still in college. Mary always wanted to study business or business management, and I was majoring in math while playing on the college baseball team with a partial scholarship. I hadn't figured out yet what I wanted to do in the future. Man, everything went upside down when Marie dropped the bomb that she's pregnant. I had to kiss goodbye to all my hopes and dreams and hustle to get a job to support our little fam. Luckily, our folks were super supportive and even organized our wedding in just 2 months. I was their only kid and they were pushing 40 when I came along, so they felt blessed to finally have a child after thinking they were gonna be childless forever. They always showered me with love. Mary had a brother named Tom who was 10 years older than her. They weren't really close because he left for college when she was just 8. He hardly visited and sadly died in a weird car crash a year after graduating. This made her parents focus more on her, like mine did with me. Yo, my folks hooked me up with the deed to our family crib as a wedding gift. They're heading down south to retire soon. I started a gig selling insurance policies at a local company and I'm getting the hang of it. The base salary for new agents is low, but the commissions from closing deals can almost double my income. It just means I gotta grind hard and put in those late nights. Mary was working her butt off, pulling 12-hour shifts into the night, even on weekends, in the months leading up to giving birth. She snagged a part-time gig as a secretary to try and earn a degree, but ended up spending most of her time studying online. Luckily, her parents came through big time during this hectic period. When the twins arrived, they were a godsend, helping out with the babies and always finding an excuse to come over and play with their grandkids. Yo, remember when Sandy Thompson messed everything up? Well, fast forward 3 years later, I was killing it in my business and my company nominated me for Salesperson of the Year in North Carolina. Our small company was on fire that year and ended up getting bought out by a big national corporation. They really believed in my success, and on top of a $2,500 bonus, I got an all-expenses-paid trip to Washington, D.C. for 3 nights. The trip included a fancy ceremony and dinner in the capital city. Yo, so we had this evening planned where they were gonna pick the bestseller of the year, and then we had 2 more days to ourselves. It was gonna be the first time me and Mary left our city together without the twins, and we were stoked. But then, 2 days before we were supposed to leave, everything went to shit. Luke got diagnosed with whooping cough, and then the next day Kelly got sick too. I had to go to the ceremony though, so Mary kissed me goodbye on Friday morning with a heavy heart. In her eyes, she made me pinky promise that I would try to have a good time in the next few days. I arrived about an hour before the gala started, so I had time to check in and let them know I was flying solo to the ceremony, without my +1. After showering, throwing some shade, and getting into my rented tuxedo, I strolled into the ballroom and found my seat at the table. I ended up sitting next to Sandy Thompson, who came from our office in Little Rock. Most of the folks at the dinner were in their 30s or older, including Sandy. I was just a year older than her, 21 at the time. It was her first full year with the company. Before this big event, I had only had a few beers in my life. This place had a free open bar during dinner. I think I only had a couple of glasses of wine. When they started announcing the awards, I was totally shocked to hear my name being shouted out as the Salesperson of the Year. I was like, wow, stunned. I walked up on stage and they gave me a trophy, a cup, and a $10,000 check. Wow, there was a huge round of applause, and when I got back to my desk, the bosses had kindly sent me a bottle of champagne. Honestly, the rest of the night is kind of a blur until I woke up at 5 a.m. the next morning. I found myself in bed next to the gorgeous naked Sandy Thompson, totally freaked out with a pounding headache and a ringing in my ears. I stumbled to my room, packed my stuff in a hurry, and was on my way home within 20 minutes. Myri was definitely surprised to see me 4.5 hours later. I ran home and, of course, she wasn't too pleased when I told her I got wasted at a Gaia dinner and woke up in another girl's bed the next morning. She cut me off, didn't want to hear my explanations or excuses, and just wanted to know the girl's name. Before I could say anything else, she grabbed a bag, took the car keys, and without a word, said she was going to her parents for a few days and left. Miranda ditched the kids with me for 3 days and didn't even bother picking up my calls. I dropped the kids off at daycare and went to work on Tuesday. When I got back, she was acting all innocent like nothing had happened. When I tried to talk to her, she shut me down and threatened to take the kids and leave if I brought it up again. We went to bed that night. One night, she jumped me in bed. There was no lovey-dovey stuff, just 90 minutes of rough sex. It took months for us to feel close again, but we eventually did. She asked me not to bring up the incident again. The next year, Mary graduated, got her business degree, and wanted a job that would put her skills to use. Our friendship with Dan and Lisa grew to the point where we were hanging out every weekend, unless Dan had to work. Even though our minds were getting in the way, it didn't stop our wives from hanging out and chilling together. It just got a bit trickier for us once Lisa and Dan moved 15 miles away closer to Dan's job. Funny enough, or maybe just by chance, Mar's parents ended up moving to the same area to rent a bigger place for the grandkids. They even started watching Robert's daughter Cassie, giving Dan and Lisa some extra freedom. Dan's business took off fast and one day they were looking for someone to manage the office, and he needed a personal assistant for himself. The job seemed perfect for Mary, and after interviewing with the managers, my wife landed the job and absolutely loved it. Miranda basically grew up with the company and was always close to Dan, which is why they jokingly called her Dan's work wife. This went on for 7 years until Lisa tragically passed away from a brain aneurysm. It was a terrible shock, especially since she was visiting me on the day it happened, as was the usual when Dan and Marie had to travel for work. Man, going through this tragedy was rough for all of us, but Dan got hit the hardest. He was totally overwhelmed and couldn't even take care of his daughter properly. So, Marie came up with the idea of having Miranda come over to their place a few times a week after work to clean up, make sure everything was in order, and prepare some easy dinners that could be reheated quickly. 16 months later, I was about to leave the garage with the last box to put in my minivan when I stopped for a moment. I saw Mary's car pulling into the driveway of the house. It was the first time she had come back since that unforgettable argument in the kitchen, when she coldly handed me the divorce papers. So, obviously, she was the last person I thought I'd see today. When she got out of the car, I said hi to her. "Miranda, aren't you breaking the restraining order by coming here?" "Hey," so I asked her casually when I was there, and she just shrugged and said the ban stopped applying the day we got divorced. She was just playing with her key ring. I asked her how she was doing, and she replied that things are as clear as day. "I'm just living in the moment and dreaming of a better future." I offered her some coffee, but I didn't wait for an answer and headed back to the house. She said that would be great and followed me. By then, there was hardly anything left in the house, just a few boxes and a lonely dining table in the kitchen, along with some old appliances and one of the bedroom sets. We left the new owners to deal with selling the rest of the furniture and household items. The sale among neighbors and acquaintances went really well over the past few days. Whatever was left will be taken to the landfill soon. The son of a former co-worker of mine said he would take care of it for me before I handed over the keys to the new residents. His wife and her friend even offered to help me with the final cleaning and organizing of the rooms in the house. I tried to say no, but they insisted. So, there's this greeting card just chillin' on the mantelpiece in my living room ever since I hit 38 a few days back. My work buddies all pitched in to send it my way, with nice messages from everyone. They even gave me another card wishing me luck in my new gig, which I've already packed up with my stuff. I've been with the same company for over 19 years, and they've always been awesome to me. It was tough saying goodbye to some good pals, but it was time to move on. There was nothing holding me back. Hey, so we made some coffee and grabbed a mug each. We sat down in the same spots where we last met face to face 16 months ago. "So, why am I suddenly enjoying your company on this nice day?" I took a sip and casually asked, because I couldn't figure out what made me come back here after she ended things between us so abruptly and harshly. Don't you get it? She snorted with obvious annoyance. The kids got letters from you saying you were. I don't get why you didn't just pick up the phone and let them know instead of sending a registered letter. I actually did that because I wanted to make sure they got the message. Otherwise, they would have freaked out and accused me of ghosting them. I actually called Kelly. Oh, my bad. I meant to say I called Kelly because I can't call Luke. What do you mean you can't call Luke? Mary asked. Man, I'm so confused. I don't even have his number. Sigh, look, the truth is, the kids don't want anything to do with me, I said, noticing her raised eyebrows and knowing she didn't buy it. Well, I'm gonna have to prove to my ex-wife how our kids really feel about me. My phone was right there on the table, so I unlocked it and called Kelly, putting it on speaker. It rang for like 10 minutes before going to voicemail. I hung up and looked at Mary. Why couldn't you call? Hey, can you do me a favor? Kelly must be tied up or something because she was giving me some lame excuses. But she still pulled out her phone and called our daughter, putting it on speaker. It's interesting that our daughter picked up after just 2 rings. Hey Mom, how's it going? Kelly's cheery voice came through. I'm good, sweetie. What are you up to? Just hanging out with Cassie right now. We're gonna hit up a party later, so we're just lounging around and conserving our energy. Daughter giggled and lazily said, Have you heard from Dad? Myri asked, raising her eyebrow at me. Yeah, I talked to him last night. He said he talked to you and promised to pick up Cassie and me today. Oh, yeah, in like 10 minutes. I think he's gonna grab Luke later too before we all head to the party, Kelly added. My stomach twisted hearing my daughter call Dad, Daddy. Mary could always tell what I was feeling, so she could see how much that. Kelly's little thoughtless comment really got to me, making me clench my fists. I just leaned back in my chair and stared blankly at the ceiling. You mean Dan? Mary asked incredulously, as if she couldn't believe what she had just heard. Well, yeah, Mom, who else? Kelly continued to giggle. By the way, he really likes it when I call him Dad. And you know he's gonna be my father in 3 weeks, she reminded her mother. In 3 weeks, my ex-wife is supposed to get married again, believe it or not. They even sent me an invitation to their celebration. Yeah, right now as. Hey, if I actually went to Kelly's place, I'm wondering, when was the last time you spoke to your biological dad? Mary asked, getting impatient and raising her voice a bit, with a hint of seriousness. Oh Mom, I can't remember, maybe a couple weeks ago, Kelly replied, noticing something off in her mom's tone. Her playful tone quickly faded as she opened up her call log to show Mary all the times she tried to reach out to her daughter, but with no luck. To be real, none of them worked. My kids haven't called me since Mary left, not one call in almost a year and a half. That's funny to hear because I'm sitting right next to him now and I saw with my own eyes how he tried to call you just a minute before I did. What's going on, Kelly? Mary asked in an even more stern voice. Oh, well, Mom, I just came out of our daughter's room, she's confused and bleeding from the nose. I just want to remind you that you only have one father, and it's not Dan. We'll talk seriously about this later, young lady, the mother said. Miranda was pissed off and ended the conversation by angrily poking the end call button. She was clearly upset as she turned off the call and pushed the phone away. Why don't you have Luke's number? She asked again. Just so you know, Dan made sure the boy had a new phone and memorized his number within hours of his old phone being stolen. If only I knew, I shrugged. Listen, don't be too hard on the kids. Apparently, they loved me so much that they found me after just over a year. I was smiling darkly for no reason at all. I crossed my fingers and squeezed them tight. You heard your daughter, she's excited to have a new dad now. You know the saying, out of sight, out of mind. Well, it seems like Kelly already sees me as a non-factor. I showed you my long list of missed calls on my phone to prove that I'm no longer involved with the kids. And from what I've heard, in 3 weeks I'll officially be replaced by the real dad. My comment really stung her, but it was just the sad truth, in my opinion. Ever since you left, I've only talked to both of them together for less than an hour. I really tried to keep in touch, but it just didn't work out. I remember this one time when I managed to score tickets to the Braves game on opening day. I was so excited and happy, but when I told Luke about it, he said he was too busy to go have fun. I just sighed and looked over at Mars' frozen statue sitting across from me. Later on, I found out that he, Dan, and a few other guys actually went to the game without me. Tickets last minute. Well, if that's what they want to do, I can't make them do anything else. We were quiet for a bit, lost in our own thoughts, before Marie coughed and changed the subject. So, you're moving out to be closer to your folks? Not really, I gotta go take care of my mom now. She needs someone there all the time. Oh my God, what happened? How's your dad handling it? You never mentioned any issues with her before, she said, her eyes lighting up. Man, Marie really cared about my folks. My mom's got Alzheimer's real bad, she hardly remembers anything most of the time. And Dad passed away about 3 weeks ago. The hospital said it was a heart attack, but I think his heart just gave out from all the pain and disappointment. My ex-wife started crying and asked why I didn't call, saying it must have been a broken heart. Yeah, so I called Kelly and told her I was tired of her BS. That was the last time we talked. It was the day after Thanksgiving when I found out Luke changed his number. Our convo with Kelly lasted like a minute. She didn't even want to hear what I had to say. She just quickly said she was busy and would call me back soon. But surprise surprise, she never did. I ended up calling her multiple times, but she never bothered to call me back. So, after a couple of weeks, it finally hit me why my kids were being shady. They blocked me on Facebook, but not my dad. Turns out, when Kelly said she was busy, she was actually hitting up the Black Friday sale with you and Grandma Roberts. I sarcastically mentioned that to her using my air quotes. And as for how I knew my dad died of a broken heart, well, that's simple. I never told my parents about the divorce. I was gonna do it eventually, but never got around to it. I gotta be honest, I was looking away and tears started welling up in my eyes. I wiped them away with my hand, took a deep breath, and kept going. When you took off, I went to see them the following weekend to have a heart-to-heart about what went down between us. When I got there, I found out just how bad my mom's health had gotten. Dad had mentioned before that she was getting forgetful, but since I last saw them at Christmas 2 years ago, it had gotten way worse. You obviously had no clue about any of this, since you never bothered to ask. Have you been able to come with me to their place in the last 3 years? Every time I took the children there, I couldn't help but drop hints about the reasons why Marie couldn't join us. We both knew it was because of my mom's illness. I couldn't bring myself to tell them the truth, so every week it got harder and harder to make excuses. But on Thanksgiving Day, after we finished dinner and put Mom to bed, Dad started questioning me. Kept bugging me with questions because he hadn't heard from you or the kids in over a year, so I had to spill the beans about our split and you walking out on me. My sister, tense as a tightrope, sat across from me, elbows digging into the table, hands covering her mouth, tears welling up in her eyes and her eyelashes trembling on her pale face. The next morning, I found my dad in his usual chair. I droned on with my sad tale as he sat there, leaning back, clutching our family photo. The sun was shining just the same. Man, that was a rough one. We were all just laughing and messing around, but she was still all teary from his crying. Yeah, May, our divorce really crushed him. You know, Mom and Dad were together for 52 years. He was old school, hoping we'd be together forever. I couldn't help but cry, tears streaming down my face as I remembered that awful day. I got up from the table, looked out the window at the sky with a few clouds. Mary was sniffling and quietly sobbing. I could hear someone behind me as I leaned my sore head against the cold glass. Without turning around, I spoke quietly. It wasn't until the funeral that I truly felt the weight of being so alone in this world. The only ones there to say goodbye to Dad were me, the chaplain, and a few neighbors. No one else showed up. I couldn't even bring my mom because she wouldn't have understood what was going on. It wasn't until a week or two after the funeral, when my mom had recovered a bit, that I can't bring myself to tell her that my dad's gone, it hurts her too much. So when Mom asks about him, I just say he's out for a bit and will be back soon. Mari was crying openly, but I was all cried out from the past few weeks of being a wreck. My eyes wandered around the room and landed on the mantelpiece, where a lonely card sat. Mary looked up at me with her teary eyes. You know, when they caught me staring, I just kept on with that blank, detached, almost otherworldly voice. Maybe I'm just feeling a bit lonely these days, even my own mom doesn't really see me anymore. But hey, she did give me life, so I gotta repay the debt by taking care of her in her final days. So yeah, I'm packing up everything here so I can be by her side for as long as she's still kicking. And then I turned to my ex-wife, straightened up and crossed my arms, shooting her a sarcastic smirk as I muttered my final words to the one I used to love so much. Damn, we were together for so long and look at the mess you caused. You ruined our marriage, messed up my relationship with my kids, and tore apart my family. I tried to keep my cool, but I couldn't hold back the anger and bitterness in my voice. And don't you dare try to blame me for all of this, Miranda. Unlike you, Dan is always there for me. Don't forget that. So, you're telling me, said Sandy Thompson, jumping up from her seat and instantly blushing. She pointed her finger in my direction with indignation. I'm sure she didn't expect that when she accused me, I would start laughing. And not just laughing, but really bursting into laughter to the point of tears in my eyes. Oh, yes, of course, I replied, barely catching my breath. Let's not forget about Sandy Thompson, the reason you spent 15+ years planning your revenge perfectly. I still remember that evening. When you flat out told me not to even bring up her name in this house or else you'd grab the kids and bail on me for good, the ex-wife lifted her chin all high and mighty, crossed her arms over her chest, and kept giving me this defiant look. Well, Mary, now that you've gone and done all that you threatened, I think it's too late to turn back. But I still need to get this off my chest once and for all, I never laid a finger on Sandy Thompson. After yelling those words, I immediately felt a weight lifted off my shoulders. When I looked into Miranda's eyes, they widened with shock and confusion. I was frozen in place after finally letting go of all the years of holding back. A sense of relief washed over me, and I continued speaking in a more relaxed tone. When I woke up early in the morning in her bed, I was still in the same tuxedo I had on the night before. Nothing ever happened between us, seriously. Do you really think I'll believe this fairy tale? She spat back at me with venomous sarcasm. Of course I expect you to believe me, why wouldn't you? Yeah, I'm telling you the truth because I've never lied to you before. And honestly, I have no reason to lie to you now that we're done. I responded more calmly, trying to keep my cool. I don't care what you think, she just shrugged it off, sounding more like Kelly than the woman I used to be married to. Her casual response pissed me off, she clearly didn't believe me but for some reason, it was important to me that she did. I grabbed her. So, I grabbed my phone, put it on speaker, and called up my old office. I motioned for Miranda to chill out and not get involved. After a few rings, Jane the receptionist picked up and said, "Hello." I said, "Hey Jane, it's Alan Dow." She replied, "Oh hi Alan, have you finished sorting out your stuff yet?" I responded cheerfully, probably getting ready for a big move. You know, everything will be different without you here. The girl sighed with regret, yeah, everything's already packed up. I just wanted to chat with my old buddy one last time before hitting the road. I said, listen, I'm trying to reach a. Hey, do you think you could check if Sandy Thompson still works in the Little Rock office? I'm not even sure if she's still there. Thanks, Alan. Sure thing, just give me a second to check the system, Jane replied. After a moment of typing on the keyboard, she confirmed, yep, Sandy still works at the same branch in Little Rock. Do you want her number or should I connect you? Thanks a lot for checking, just transfer my call please. Hey girl, take care of yourself. And if Paul decides to put a ring on it, you better invite me to the wedding. Alan will be waiting too. Jane laughed and don't forget about us either, alright? Okay, I'm connecting you now so you can join the conversation. May looked confused but now she's watching me closely. Hello, Sandy is on the line, a familiar voice said that I haven't heard in years. Hi Sandy, it's Alan Dow from the Grenville office. I don't even know if you remember me. OMG, guess who I just heard from? Alan Dowd. Can you believe it? I've been dreaming about him for years, the guy I always wanted but never got. And now out of the blue, he calls me. Sandy couldn't believe it either, she was like, how the hell are you, before I even had a chance to respond. It's like some kind of telepathy, because just the other day I was thinking about him. It's been like 16 years since we last spoke at that fancy reception. Hey, remember when we first met? I saw you a few more times at other events, but never had the chance to catch up. You know how hectic those crowded parties and meetings can be. I remember when we finally got to chat in Washington, even though it was 17 years ago. Honestly, I don't remember much from that night besides the award ceremony. I told her, Alan, you were hilarious. Hey, that night you could totally hear her smiling in her voice when she said those words. You remember that? Well, I remember giving a clumsy thank you speech, then leaving the stage and somehow ending up still drinking champagne at the table. But honestly, after that, my memory gets a bit fuzzy. All I can say is that was the first and only time I got that wasted in my life. I remember feeling embarrassed as San's loud laughter blasted through the fake speakers. Damn, by the end of the night, it was a mess. Hey, you were looking pretty good last night, but honestly, you didn't drink as much as everyone else, Alan. Do you want me to be honest? She teased me with a sly voice. Well, go ahead and hit me with your honesty, Miss Thompson, I played along with my former colleague. I have to admit, I had my eye on you that night, even though I knew I had some serious competition from all those single ladies there. And yeah, there was this tall, dark-haired, attractive guy who looked like a total stud. Man, Sandy was cracking up with those bees buzzing around him. I couldn't help but join in, looking over at Marie who was giving Cy the stink eye while he rambled on. And then, when I convinced you to dance, I accidentally brushed my hand against something big and hard. Yeah, it was getting steamy in there. I swear, I almost passed out from it. It was a bit awkward being called May all night, but at least it showed me how much you cared. Your wife's face totally changed after S said something, she even looked a bit pale. It was around 11 when you mumbled something to me and then passed out in your chair. When the party ended after midnight and everyone went to bed, you were still in the hall. I had to ask the night porter to help me carry you to bed. I had no recollection of any of this, so I was intrigued to hear S's story about that night, which ended up being a turning point in our story. So, the thing with Miranda was that no one knew which room she was staying in. The hotel computers were all disconnected from the network because they were doing some kind of late-night program update or something. I didn't really bother getting into the details, but the bottom line is that all the door key cards were the same and didn't have room numbers on them. The only logical solution at the time was to just bunk you in my room. Let me tell you, trying to fit a big guy like you into my room was no easy feat. Hardly moving my own members. There was a pause on the phone, only some slight rustling was heard in the speakers. After a few seconds, Sandy spoke again. Sorry, I took a couple sips of water but while I was chatting with you, I got a fever and my throat was dry. With all these memories, she admitted with a laugh. So, where did I stop there? Oh yes, you finally ended up in my room. Well, I have to admit, at that moment I was ready to get a little naughty, she said in a rather embarrassed voice. I already said that I accidentally felt. Hey, remember when me and the receptionist were trying to get you onto the bed? It was just a casual touch, but damn, I quickly realized you were not only tall but also packing some heat, if you catch my drift. She called for help on the phone, and I felt bad as you almost passed out while we were moving you into the room. Then you just collapsed on the bed muttering something I couldn't make out. I mean, I wanted to do something with you, but Sandy sighed cause you were practically dead weight. That's just rude, if you ask me. So, I usually don't do this kind of thing, but I was kinda drunk that night and super horny. I ended up getting butt naked and laying next to you, hoping that when you woke up and saw me, you'd be totally into it. But, surprise surprise, it didn't work. I woke up the next morning and you were gone, and nobody knew where you went all weekend. All I can say is, Alan, your wife must be one lucky lady. Marry her, dude. Her eyes were like saucers, she slapped a hand over her mouth, and it hit her like a ton of bricks just how big of a mess she had made. I gotta be real, in that moment, I had zero sympathy for my ex-wife. The reason our marriage went down the drain was all because of her impulsive decisions and cocky attitude. The sneaky, calculated plot she had been scheming for years just to get one over on me proved that I didn't even know who she really was. And now look, she's my ex-wife. If only I knew then what I know now. You know, I reckon I would have said yes to your tempting offer, I replied to Sandy, chuckling. She burst out laughing, saying, well, honey, you're about 7 years too late if you were hoping to reconnect now. I'm happily married with 2 amazing kids. I still go by Thompson at work cause all my clients know me by that name. But officially, I'm Sandy Roberts. I met Robert 8 years ago, and he was the first guy after you who really got to me heart. And with those words, a wrinkle appeared. Miranda looked like she was about to explode, gripping the table with her fingers and making a face like she was in serious pain. Her eyes were locked on the phone in the middle of the table, staring at it like it was a deadly snake ready to strike. I was confused by her reaction, not sure what was going on. Then she started talking about how she thought of me because of Rob, which I found strange. She laughed and said it was because Rob's older brother Dan is. Hey, so this dude is tying the knot in a few weeks and his fiancée's last name is Dud, just like yours. I was thinking, maybe she's related to you since you're the only Dud I know. Now I get why you were so surprised. None of my relatives are named Andy, which is kind of funny considering the only Andy I knew was back in high school that was ages ago. Crazy, right? Remember how she used to flip out whenever someone called her that? She'd get so angry and start screaming like a maniac because she didn't want people thinking she was a dude. I smirked at Miranda, who turned as red as a lobster and couldn't meet my eyes. It's like I don't even know her anymore. But seriously, no one would ever mistake Andy for a guy now. She's stunning, with 2 awesome kids, Kelly and Luke, who are off at college. And don't forget about Cassie, Kelly, and Dan's daughter. She's the best. Me and my friends all roomed together in Florida. They were both bridesmaids in my wedding and Luke was Rob's usher. He did an awesome job getting everything ready for the ceremony and keeping the guests entertained. Let me tell you, he's a great guy. Over the years, we've spent Christmas and Thanksgiving together multiple times with Dan, Andy, and their kids. Rob once mentioned to me that they had been dating on and off for 13 years. Can you believe that? Just that little bit of info told me a lot. It just goes to show that Mary's parents definitely knew what was going on between them. Mary and Dan always had my back when my wife wasn't around. Whenever I called, they would come up with all kinds of excuses for why I couldn't talk to her directly. But then Mary would call me back, and as I was thinking about her last words, just going along with it, her tone suddenly got serious. She started talking more quietly and said, "Actually, Alan, I don't think they should get married. Even if they do, their marriage is doomed from the start." I was shocked. Why, though? You know what? What's gonna stop them? They've been together for so long. May, who was directly involved, was even more shocked than me. Her eyebrows shot up, her mouth dropped open, and she leaned forward in suspense. Lord Alan, it's because they're both cheaters. I mean, Dan cheated on his first wife Lisa with Andy. I don't know how or why he did it because I'm sure Lisa was also gorgeous, even though I never actually met her, but I saw her pictures. Anyway, Andy and I had a real talk about this one day. So, she was saying that her husband and kids know she's got a work husband and a home husband. She claims she splits her time between them. And apparently, her house husband has a thing going on with a woman at work too. Can you believe it? I muttered, trying to get Miranda to look at me, but she was avoiding eye contact. Her face was flushed and her chest was rising and falling with each breath, looking all flustered. I made sure to let Rob know that I would not think twice about taking his stuff if he ever crossed that line. Sandy told me she was dead serious about it, with a confidence that was almost scary. And then, without any warning, she dropped a bomb on my ex by revealing something damaging. Even though Sandy had no idea, Dan still has someone backing him up, despite his connection with Andy. I guess that's just how he rolls. I always had a feeling this guy had a backup plan. So, get this, his new girlfriend's name is Tilly and he's always seeing her whenever he's in Chicago. Apparently, according to Rob, he plans his business trips just so he can go see her every few weeks. I was watching Mar's reaction and her face went from red to pale, then she even looked a bit green. She leaned on the table, gasping for air, looking like she was about to puke right there. Sandy kept talking excitedly. The latest gossip from my ex-besties is wild. I don't think they would have tied the knot if his higher-ups didn't force him to marry Andy after her ex-husband sued the company for her leaving him. Can you believe it? Alan, her stay-at-home hubby, had no clue what was going on and couldn't handle the drama. There are still decent guys out there, right? Rob spilled the beans that his company had to pay a hefty sum to keep this scandal under wraps. Crazy stuff, man. Thanks a lot, I thought to myself. Plus, they gave Dan an ultimatum: he better fix things or they'll kick him out. Not the best way to start a life together, huh? Imagine being nagged by your spouse while staring down the barrel of a gun pointed at them. Myri freaked out, knocked over a chair, and ran to the bathroom to throw up. Can't say I blame her. Man, after all the crap she heard today, her whole little world she spent ages building got totally messed up and went down the drain. Turns out Dan, who she thought was the real deal, was actually a phony. But hey, that's not my problem anymore. I talked to Sandy for a bit longer, and she was all excited talking about her kids and asking me what my next move was. I mentioned that I'm already looking for a job thanks to my old company's recommendation. Yo, so I got a job at this insurance company branch near my mom's place. But get this, they weren't just trying to sell insurance, they wanted me to look into shady insurance cases. It was a whole new gig for me, but I was pumped for the challenge. The pay wasn't as good as my last job, but it still paid the bills. Plus, I got my own office and assistant, so I was back in the game and ready to hustle for the future. Miranda came back looking worn out, leaning on the walls as I finished talking to Sandy. We swapped numbers and promised to stay in touch every now and then. After saying goodbye to Sandy and hanging up, I noticed my ex-wife. She didn't look great, her face was wet, pale, and miserable. Her makeup was all messed up or gone. Miranda looked like she had aged years in just 15 minutes. I felt sorry for her. She sobbed and collapsed into a chair, looking defeated. Dude, she just dropped her head on her arms and told me she's serious this time. Me too, Miranda, me too. Listen, I don't have time right now. I gotta follow this lead while it's hot. I should be in Brunswick by morning. It's like a 6-hour drive from here if you go non-stop, but I'll need to make a few pit stops along the way. All these boxes are yours, they've got all your stuff, clothes, photos, and other crap you left behind. I just waved my hand and walked away. Hey, I was gonna send those packages to you next week, but since you're here, I can just toss them in your car if you want. I suggested to her calmly, thanks to the politeness my parents drilled into me. Actually, can I ask you a big favor? She quietly muttered, not even looking me in the eyes. Can I crash here tonight? I don't think I can go back home right now. Just thinking about it for a few seconds, I jingled the keys on my finger and then unhooked a couple and placed them on the table in front of her. What the hell, why not? Here are your keys and your flag, hold onto them for now, but when you leave, you'll have to drop them off at the real estate office. I told Mary that the new tenants are coming on Monday, so you have a good 9 days to do whatever you need to do. This Sunday, some people are coming to help me get rid of unnecessary stuff and clean up my apartment. Utilities will be taken care of. Keep doing your thing until Monday. I glanced around the room and mentally kicked myself. I went over to the fireplace and grabbed a greeting card left by my old co-workers. Their warmth and sincerity will always be with me in my new job. Now all that's left is to say goodbye to your ex. It's done, take care, Mary. I really gotta go now. Goodbye, hopefully we never cross paths again. I walked out and looked back one more time at the person I used to love with all my heart. All I can remember now is seeing a broken woman sitting at the table, crying her heart out. Make sure to subscribe to our channel so your partner doesn't betray you, and keep on listening to the next story because it's gonna blow your mind even more than this one.